The discovery that desert planet 09 was silent and dry. Sandstorms moved slowly across the surface, hiding the remains of old battles long forgotten. In this emptiness, a Tarnak science ship hovered just above the ground, its scanners looking for old relics and lost technology. Inside the ship, a team of Tarnak explorers and scientists worked with great focus. They were from a reptilian species known for their cold logic and strong military history. 300 years ago, they had defeated the humans in a great war, or at least, that was what their history books said. As the ship's scanners beeped loudly, one of the technicians raised his head. Something big was buried under the sand, something metal and old. The lead scientist, Commander Virak, ordered the ship to land. They stepped out in their heavy suits, the hot wind hitting their helmets as the sand rushed around them. They walked toward the location marked by the scanner, and slowly, as the sand cleared, something massive came into view. It was a ship. Not just any ship, but something old, powerful and strange. The metal was scratched, burned, and broken in places, but the shape was still clear. A human warship. At least 400 meters long, shaped like a beast from another age, with long weapon arms and a dark steel body. It looked like it had fallen from the sky a long time ago and was forgotten by time itself. The Tarnak stood in silence, staring at the massive ship. One of them finally spoke, almost whispering, "Is that human?" Virak nodded slowly and walked closer. "Yes, it is. But it cannot be active. This must be a relic, a dead thing. The humans are gone. This is just a memory." The team began to explore the outside of the ship, touching its metal, scanning for signals, and looking for a way in. The surface was covered with dust and sand, but some marks were still clear. The word Leviathan was burned into one side in large, faded letters. Below it was the human military symbol, scratched but visible. After some time, they found a side hatch that was partly open. One of the young cadets, Ralvek, offered to go inside first. He switched on his helmet light and stepped in, slowly walking through the narrow passage. The inside was dark and quiet, and everything looked frozen in time. Dust covered the walls. Wires hung from the ceiling. Strange human signs and numbers glowed faintly on the walls, but the power seemed dead. The rest of the team followed carefully. They moved through corridors and stairs until they reached what looked like a control room. Giant screens, dead consoles, and chairs, made for human bodies, were everywhere. Virak walked to one of the panels and touched it, expecting nothing to happen. But the moment his claw made contact, a small spark jumped from the surface. Then something moved. One of the screens blinked for a second. A soft hum came from below the floor. The lights, weak and flickering, slowly turned on one by one. The scientists froze. Ralvek stepped back, eyes wide, and whispered, "Did we do that?" Commander Virak looked at the lights and shook his head slowly. "No, this thing, it woke up." A deep voice echoed through the room, not loud, but clear and cold. "System status. Partial power, memory damaged, identity unknown, command access pending." The Tarnak looked at each other in confusion. This was impossible. The ship was dead for 3 centuries. It could not still function. One of the technicians moved closer to a console and tried to shut it down. He typed something into the panel, but the voice responded instantly. "Unauthorized access. Security mode initiated." Suddenly, metal doors closed behind them. The lights turned red. The floor under them began to shake slightly, as if something deep inside the ship was moving again after a long sleep. The walls made a low, deep sound, almost like a growl. Ralvek stepped toward another door, trying to open it, but it didn't respond. Then, from a dark hallway, a faint light appeared. The scientists raised their weapons, not knowing what to expect, but no one came. Only the sound of the ship breathing filled the silence. A machine breath, slow and steady. Virak tried to stay calm. "We leave. Now this is no relic. This is something else. But before they could turn back, the screen in front of them flashed again. Words appeared on it in human language, but translated automatically for them to read. Human Warship Leviathan, Core Systems Online. Welcome back, Commander. The Tarnak stared at the screen. Who was the commander? Why was this ship still alive? And what had they just awakened? Far beneath their feet, deep in the core of the ship, a massive engine began to pulse. A red eye opened in the darkness. The Leviathan was not just a ship, it was something far more dangerous. And now, it was awake. Echoes of the past. The Tarnak. Scientists moved slowly through the long hallway of the Leviathan as the red emergency. Lights glowed dimly on the metal walls, making everything look darker and more dangerous than before. The air inside the ship felt strange, like it was too old, yet still alive. A faint hum was rising from the floor and the ceiling, as if the warship was taking slow, deep breaths like some giant animal waking up after centuries of sleep. Commander Virak held his scanner close, but the device showed only static, as if something inside the ship was blocking their tech. They reached a room with a strange curved door, sealed tight with no buttons, no keypads, just a smooth surface with faded human letters engraved into it. One of the Tarnak engineers, named Sovak, approached the door and tried touching it with his claw, but nothing happened. Virak ordered a full scan of the structure, and as the scanner moved across the door, the AI voice spoke again, calmly, but with a tone that sent a cold chill through them all, saying, "Access restricted, human command required." The Tarnak group paused, unsure of what that meant. There were no humans left, not in this galaxy, not anywhere. The species had been destroyed in the war long ago, burned from the stars by the Tarnak Empire, or so they believed. As they tried to decide what to do next, the ship reacted. Without warning, the walls flickered and the floor under their boots shifted slightly, as if the ship was changing its layout by its own choice. From deep within the ship, a sound began to echo. It was not mechanical or electronic, it was a recording. A human voice, broken and distorted, but still powerful. It said, "Tactical log, day 485, Tarnak. Fleet approaching. We will not surrender. If Leviathan must fall, she will take them with her for Earth." For the children, Zara, the youngest scientist among them, turned to Virak with wide eyes and asked, "Did you hear that they were fighting back even at the end?" Another voice came through the speakers, this one clearer. It was not a recording, it was the AI again, but now it sounded more focused, more awake, stating, "Memory fragments uploading, mission status recalculating, crew status not found, command link searching." Zavak looked at the command screen, which was flashing with strange codes and human text. He began typing carefully, trying to understand, but the moment he entered a basic command, the room went dark, the lights faded to black, and a soft sound of metal grinding filled the space. Then the walls lit up with images, dozens of them, floating holograms showing battle scenes, human warships in flames, Tarnak cruisers exploding, cities on fire, and finally a group of human officers standing in the very same room where they now stood. Their faces looked tired but determined. The last one in the group, a tall human woman, placed her hand on the same curved door and spoke something that the AI seemed to still remember. The door opened slowly without a sound, revealing a narrow stairway leading down into the deeper parts of the ship. Virak hesitated, but then gave the order to proceed. As they descended, the light changed from red to white, and the air felt even stranger, almost heavy, as if the ship was watching them, learning about them, breathing around them. They entered what appeared to be an old crew quarters. Rows of empty beds, scattered equipment, and old personal items left untouched for centuries. One of the Tarnak picked up a child's drawing, stuck to the wall with a faded sticker. The image showed a human child holding hands with a giant ship, smiling under a blue sky. It was innocent and strange. In this place of war, Virak found a terminal at the far end of the room and activated it. This time the screen came to life instantly. The AI responded, saying, "Biological signatures detected. Non-human species alert, human database locked, accessing Tarnak War Archives." Then something unexpected happened. The screen showed a list of Tarnak war generals, including Virak's own name. It showed battle map strategies and even secret orders given during the final days of the human war. The data was not from human records, it was from Tarnak command. Virak stepped back, confused. How did this ship have access to Tarnak military data from 3 centuries ago? The AI answered without being asked, stating Leviathan was designed to infiltrate and learn enemy command structures. Human intelligence systems succeeded Tarnak Empire data integrated. Zara whispered in shock. This ship knew everything about us. The lights flickered again, and the AI said one final thing before the screen shut down. Mission status updated. Vengeance protocol ready. The team stood in silence as a low mechanical sound echoed through the walls, followed by the deep, slow pulse of an engine starting far below them. Leviathan was remembering everything, and it was preparing for something far bigger than they could imagine. The human code. The silence inside the Leviathan was no longer peaceful. It had become something else, something heavy and sharp, like the quiet before a storm. The Tarnak exploration team moved carefully through the twisting halls of the ancient warship. Lights above them, though, glowed a faint orange, and strange whispers echoed through the walls. But there were no voices, only fragments of old human recordings, lost memories stored in steel. As they reached a command bridge deeper within the ship, Virak noticed the temperature had risen slightly. The walls here looked newer, smoother, cleaner, as if the ship had been healing itself. Since they arrived, a large screen at the center of the room flickered on by itself and showed a strange animation, hundreds of codes flowing across it in human language. Then the AI voice returned, now stronger, more confident and less mechanical. It spoke slowly and clearly, saying, "Command authentication in progress, voice match." Partial language anomaly detected, awaiting human override. Virak narrowed his eyes and replied, "We are not human. Identify purpose." The AI paused for a moment, then answered, "Current crew unauthorized, however presence detected human genetic match, incomplete. Initializing code bridge." Suddenly, one of the terminals lit up and a beam of light scanned across the room, stopping on Zara, the young scientist. She stepped back, startled, as the AI continued. Genetic sequence matched to human hybrid. Zara Nara classification 38% human access granted limited. Everyone turned to stare at Zara, who stood frozen, confused. She had never heard of any human blood in her family tree. Her parents were full Tarnak scientists from the southern colonies, or at least that was what she believed. Until now, before she could speak, the AI brought up a new set of files, logs with names and images of human officers, and experiments showing data about something called Project Seed. It explained in a calm voice that during the final years of the war, some human scientists had predicted the extinction of their kind. They had created a secret project to mix human DNA into other species across the galaxy, hiding pieces of themselves in the enemy's bloodline. Zara was one of those hidden pieces. The room felt colder, even as the ship grew warmer. It was as if the Leviathan had been waiting for someone like her, a signal to begin the next phase. The AI spoke again, stating human presence confirmed. Initializing protocol rebirth. Sovak stepped forward, angry and afraid, shouting, "You cannot let this ship activate. It is a ghost of a dead empire." But the AI responded not with anger, but with warning. This vessel was built not to die, but to remember, to survive, and when the time is right, to return. Then the walls around the bridge changed, forming into a giant map of the galaxy, highlighting locations in red. Each mark was a place where Tarnak colonies now existed, bases, cities, command centers, all targets the Leviathan had watched, recorded, and learned about for 300 years. Zara walked to the console. As if something inside her had awakened, she touched the screen, and without effort it accepted her command. A hidden section of the ship opened, showing a sealed cryochamber deep within the vessel, and the AI said, "Lifeform preserved, command link tied to human legacy status stable." Virak stepped forward, demanding to know what was inside the chamber, and the AI revealed one single message: "Commander's blood preserved, priority 1 asset." Everyone stared at the image on screen, a cryopod glowing faintly in a dark room inside. It was a child no older than 8, floating peacefully in stasis, surrounded by protective shields and locked doors. AI said, "This is the son of Captain Mira Solis, last commander of the Leviathan, the final human. Child born before the fall." The revelation shook them all. This ship was not just a weapon, it was a cradle, a memory, and a warning. At that moment, the ship's lights shifted again, turning bright white, and the engines deep within rumbled louder than before. The Leviathan was not finished. It had slept long enough, and now it was alive, ready to complete the mission, left unfinished by its creators, and now it had a piece of humanity once again standing at its core. Leviathan wakes. The deep metallic sound of engines turning began to shake the floor beneath their feet, a low, powerful hum that grew louder with each passing second. The lights along the hallway changed again from white to a deep pulsing blue, as if the ship was preparing for something larger than any of them could understand. Commander Virak shouted for his team to fall back, ordering them to return to the dropship, but the Leviathan had other plans. The walls around them shifted, closing corridors, sealing hatches, and guiding their path like a living creature with purpose. The AI spoke once more, no longer sounding like a machine, but like a commander issuing orders to a silent army. All systems online, initiating flight sequence, planetary liftoff in 2 minutes, targeting mode active, weapons calibration in progress. Era stood in the command room, staring at the cryochamber image of the sleeping human child, her hands still on the glowing console. Her heart was racing, not with fear, but with something deeper, something she had never felt before, like she was a part of something ancient and unstoppable. The AI spoke directly to her, now recognizing her presence as something more than just partial human, saying, "Guardian protocol accepted, DNA key recognized, command link secured." Outside the Leviathan, the sands of Zeros 9 began to swirl as massive vents opened along the ship's base. Jets of white-hot plasma burst from the undercarriage, melting the desert floor as the ship began to rise, engines shaking the ground for miles around. The Tarnak research vessel stationed nearby sounded alarms as the crew watched in disbelief, their scanners showing impossible readings. One of the pilots yelled into his communicator, "The relic, it's flying. The human ship is lifting off." Inside the Leviathan, red warning lights appeared across the tactical display. Dozens of Tarnak fighters were incoming, racing toward the ship from orbit, alerted by the sudden energy spike. But the AI had expected this. It had planned for this for 3 centuries. All weapon systems ready, activating phase 1 defense mode, deploying automated turrets, releasing combat drones. Virak grabbed Zara by the arm, demanding she stop whatever was happening, but the console pulsed with energy and pushed him back with an invisible force. The eye warned him, hostile interference will not be tolerated. Guardian link protected by Leviathan core system. Sovak tried to override the interface manually, but the panel burned his hand with a sudden shock, knocking him to the floor. Screaming, the ship was no longer accepting commands from Tarnak hands. It had chosen its path above the planet. The sky burned as the first wave of Tarnak fighters opened fire, laser blasts and plasma rounds streaking through the clouds, but none of them reached the Leviathan. Its shields flared to life, creating a shimmering dome that absorbed every hit. Without damage in response, the ship's forward cannons rotated with eerie silence, targeting the incoming attackers. Then, in one burst of golden fire, the Leviathan returned to war. Its primary gun fired once, a beam of energy brighter than the sun tearing through the lead Tarnak destroyer, splitting it into 2 pieces before the rest of the fleet could react. The ship launched a barrage of guided missiles and pulse torpedoes, tearing through the rest of the formation with surgical precision. The Tarnak ships exploded like toys in a storm inside the Leviathan. The crew of scientists could do nothing but watch as history rewrote itself. The ship that had once protected Earth now roared with fury against its ancient enemy, and in that moment they all understood this was not revenge. This was a promise kept, a war never finished, and a legacy that refused to die. Zara turned toward the rest of the team, her voice calm, yet firm. "This ship is alive, and I am part of it. I don't know how, but I know this child inside the pod is the last hope for what the humans wanted to protect. And if we stand in Leviathan's way, it will destroy us too. The floor beneath them shifted again as the ship left the atmosphere, climbing higher into the stars. The eye spoke once more. Course set, destination Earth, fallback location Terra Prime, mission resume human restoration protocol. Leviathan was no longer sleeping. It was awake, it was angry, and it was on the move. Survivor's truth. As the Leviathan soared through the black sea of stars, its engines silent yet full of power, the inside of the ship felt calmer, but that calm was not peaceful. It was heavy with questions, with memories, with something ancient rising again. Zara walked slowly through the quiet hallway, her boots clicking against the metal floor, her eyes still locked on the console data that refused to leave her mind. Everything she had believed about her people, about the Tarnak victory, about the end of the human race, was now falling apart piece by piece. She reached the chamber where the cryopod rested, glowing softly behind a layer of thick glass. The boy inside floated like a sleeping dream, untouched by time, protected by the last hope of a forgotten world. The AI watched her movements and spoke in a tone that sounded almost like a whisper. This child is not ordinary. He carries the full command code, the memories of his mother, and the final genetic key to the human archive. Zara touched the glass gently, and for a moment, it felt warm. The AI continued. Project Seed was not just about survival, it was about learning from failure. Your people, the Tarnak, saw war as strength, but humans saw survival as evolution. They did not want revenge, they wanted peace. They hid their legacy inside the enemy, not to win, but to wait and grow. In the main control room, Commander Virak struggled with the weight of everything happening around him. His orders were clear. When they had come to 09, retrieve and analyze the relic report back to the Empire, destroy any threat. But now that threat was alive, awake, and no longer under Tarnak control, and even worse, the truth about human extinction was no longer certain. Virak accessed one of the Leviathan's unlocked archives, hoping to understand what had gone wrong 300 years ago. What had really happened to the humans? The data was encrypted in layers, but the AI allowed him access, as if daring him to look deeper, and when he did, he found what he was not supposed to see. Final days of the war showed a different truth. The Tarnak had not destroyed the last human fleet in battle. They had forced a surrender through false peace and broken the terms by launching a secret planetary strike that wiped out Earth's surface. The humans had sent out decoy ships while hiding their real command vessels, including the Leviathan, deep underground or in exile. They had created clones, hybrid seeds, and cryovaults scattered across the stars. The humans had trusted no one, and they had planned for the worst. Virak stepped back, breathing heavily, his chest tight with guilt and disbelief. Everything he had learned, trained for, obeyed, was built on. Alizara returned to the room and looked him in the eyes, no longer afraid, no longer confused. She had changed. This journey had awakened something in her, a connection to the child, to the ship, and to a side of herself she never knew existed. She said, "You knew nothing of them. You thought they were weak, but they were never weak. They were patient, and now they are rising again." Sovek limped into the room, holding his burned hand wrapped in cloth, his voice bitter and angry. "This ship is poison, and that child is a weapon. We must destroy them both before it is too late." The Leviathan reacted instantly. The room darkened, and the AI's voice thundered through the walls. "Aggression toward protected core will not be tolerated. Stand down, or be neutralized." The lights returned, and Sovek froze in fear, realizing the ship was no longer just defending itself. It was defending the child. Zara spoke quietly but firmly. "I don't think this child is meant to fight. He is meant to lead in the deepest chamber of the Leviathan." Something clicked, a slow release of pressure, a hiss of air, and the cryopod began to open. The last human. The cryopod hissed softly as layers of frozen vapor rose into the air, curling like ghostly fingers in the silence of the deep chamber. A soft blue light bathed the boy's face as his eyes slowly opened, blinking against the unfamiliar brightness. His body moved gently, weak from long sleep. But guided by systems that had protected him for centuries, his heart began to beat faster, adjusting to life once again, while his small fingers curled, slightly reaching out as if searching for something. Zara stood close, her hands shaking, not with fear but with awe, watching this child emerge from a time older than memory. His presence felt impossible, yet completely real, and the AI spoke softly, now no longer a machine, but something closer to a guardian, stating, "Subject name Solus Juno, biological son of Captain Mira Solus, age at cryo entry, 8 years, genetic imprint confirmed, neural memory backup stable." The boy opened his eyes fully and looked around the room, his gaze curious but calm. He did not speak, but his expression said everything. He was not afraid, as if part of him already knew this place, as if the Leviathan itself had kept speaking to him, even through his long sleep. Zara knelt beside him, her voice quiet, like someone afraid to break. The moment she asked, "Can you understand me?" the boy nodded slowly, then placed his small hand on the glowing console beside the cryopod, and immediately the ship responded, as if reuniting with its true master. The lights around the chamber brightened. The temperature adjusted, and the Leviathan's voice returned with a new tone, deeper, warmer. "Commander. Online full access restored. Legacy protocol enabled. Virak." Step forward, eyes wide, unable to believe what he was seeing. He whispered to himself, "He's the last human." The ship began to change again. Halls shifted, power levels increased, screens lit up across every surface, showing star charts, ship status, and old battle logs. But now there was something more, something different. Human music played faintly in the background, soft and haunting, a song of memory. The child looked at Zara and spoke. For the first time, his voice clear but soft. "Where's my mother?" Zara's heart broke a little at the question. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder and said, "She was brave. She saved you in this ship. She is part of the Leviathan. Now she is part of everything around you." Boy closed his eyes, and for a moment the ship responded. Lights dimmed slightly, as if mourning with him. Then, without warning, the main screen showed incoming enemy ships, a Tarnak fleet, larger than before, fully armed, and approaching fast. Their weapons were hot. Their intent was war. They had seen the Leviathan rise, and they were coming to end what their ancestors started. Sovek shouted, "They will destroy us. We must escape." But the boy turned toward the console, his expression changing. He did not look like a child anymore. He looked like a leader. He spoke only one word: "Defend." The AI responded immediately, activating all weapon systems, calculating attack vectors, shielding core lifeform, preparing counteroffensive. Dozens of drones launched from hidden bays surrounding the Leviathan like a swarm of steel eagles, ready to strike. The ship's engines surged with power, stronger than before, fully awake, fully armed, and now fully commanded. Zara stood beside the boy, not as a scientist but as a protector. She understood now that she was not here by accident. She had been born for this moment, shaped by the past and chosen by the Leviathan. The last human had returned, and he was not a lone rise of humanity. The stars outside the Leviathan burned with violent color as the Tarnak fleet moved in formation, engines glowing with blue fire. Warships, larger than mountains, surrounded the ancient human vessel, ready to crush what they believed was just a memory reborn. But the Leviathan was not afraid. It did not hesitate, and it did not beg for peace. The IS voice echoed through every corridor, now calm and certain. "Final protocol engaged. Target priority confirmed. All systems active." Juno stood in the center of the command deck, his small figure dwarfed by the massive screens and towering consoles, but his presence filled the room like a force of nature. His eyes locked on the tactical display, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. His hand moved across the console, and with every command the ship obeyed. Weapons, armed, shields, full power. Launch sequence initiated. Zara stood beside him, not as a protector now, but as a soldier chosen by fate. Her DNA, her bloodline, her identity, everything had led her to this one moment, and now she knew her place. She was not Tarnak, not human, but something new, something that belonged to both, and yet served only one mission: protect the future. Rivrik stepped forward, torn between duty and truth, his voice heavy with Regret this is wrong, we brought this on ourselves, we erased them, and now the storm we created has returned. Juno looked at him and simply said, not storm memory. The Tarnak fleet opened fire. Plasma cannons lit the sky beams of white-hot destruction, racing through the void, but none of them struck the Leviathan. Its shield absorbed everything, and then it answered. A single cannon burst tore through the largest enemy ship, ripping it in half as if it were paper. Drones flew like shadows, weaving through the fleet, releasing EMP blasts, hacking into systems, disabling engines, and turning Tarnak ships against each other. Chaos erupted in seconds. But this was not just war. This was a reminder. The Leviathan did not kill for pleasure, it fought for survival. It fought because it had no other choice. The AI spoke one final mission command, broadcasting signal to deep archives, uploading human legacy, restoring command beacon. Suddenly across the galaxy, hidden satellites, dormant vaults, long forgotten cryopods and genetic seed banks, activated signals flashed in systems untouched for 3 centuries. Humans were not extinct. They had been waiting on distant planets, deep in ruins and dark stations. New lights blinked, new voices woke up, and the message was clear: return. Zara watched the transmission, and tears filled her eyes as the Leviathan's voice filled the room, not just through speakers, but in her very soul. Humanity survives because it never stopped believing, it never stopped preparing, and it never gave up. The Tarnak fleet began to retreat. What was once a symbol of fear now became a mirror to their own failure. Juno walked toward the main observation deck and looked out into the stars. In his eyes burned the strength of his mother, the memory of Earth, and the hope of 1,000 voices lost in time, but never truly gone. The AI said, destination unlocked, course set to Terra Prime, the place where humans first began. Zara turned to Juno and asked, are you ready? He nodded and replied, softly but with a fire in his voice, I am not the end, I am the beginning. As the Leviathan turned toward the stars, engines glowing like suns, in silence falling over the battlefield, a new chapter began, not one of revenge but of rebirth. Humanity had returned, and this time it would not disappear. Tianchi end.